The last topic, which I'd like to talk about in this mini course, is the 8 Dimensions of Sexuality. That's my adaptation of one of the Quodoushka Wheels. Quodoushka's a form of shamanistic tantra, and they have lots of descriptive wheels. And my 8 Dimensions is an adaptation of that. So the wheel is basically north, south, east, west, and then the nodes in between. I find it helpful as a way of delineating different areas of sexuality. And I think you might find it helpful to combine the schema that I'm about to set out with some of the maps that I've talked about previously. I originated it as a kind of explanatory device for couples, and I wanted them to step outside their usual way of behaving, but I think it's useful generally. So I'd like to give a brief introduction to it, and so you can get a sense then of the possibilities for you. So starting with the cardinal points, so north is agreement. So in my context, north is about work specifically to do with consent, and given my background, that's work that I've learned from Betty Martin. So it's things like the 3-minute game, bossy massage, all of those sort of things. There's a lot of material there, but it's basically about explicit consent. And in the Quodoushka Wheel, that's essentially the adult position. The opposite to that, south, in the Quodoushka system is the position of the child, and in my position pretty similarly, it's the position of innocence, and it's that position where we can just receive experience in a very clear, open way. So for instance, a very good way of getting into contact with that sense of innocence is very gentle anal work. Now, anal work is kind of a porn staple. It's represented as something extreme and transgressive and so on. But I don't look at it in that way at all, because it's our primary erotic point as babies, little children. And firstly, anatomically, it's very, very, very sensitive, but it has a sense of eroticism, which is distinctive. So, if we receive anal touch that is gentle, soft, wanted, obviously that goes without saying. What we experience is something which is both unusual but oddly familiar at the same time. So it's before our experience bifurcates into sensation and emotion. So we're feeling a lot, but that feeling has a clear emotional overlay. It's very rich, and it's also very engaging to our imagination. So work there, work with the innocent, perhaps work with the mouth as well, which again, is similar, very early experiences of very early eroticism. That's a way of re-engaging us with this wholeness and innocence of very early eroticism, which is a beautiful jewel which lies undiscovered within us, but which is capable of discovery. So that's the first thing, north and south. So the other 2 points, west is body and east is spirit. So body, west, is the kind of experience that you would have, for instance, if you're just engaged with someone else, or engaged with a group of people, just in a very simple physical way. So an orgy, for instance, would be a classic West activity, or you just engaging with somebody for the first time might well be just a West activity. So it doesn't have all that overlay of personal relating. It doesn't have a psychological overlay. It's body. And by contrast, East, spirit, I identify with Tantra. And in that I bring all the work that I've done with my primary Tantra teacher, Haley Spenceley, which I earlier did with my first Tantra teacher, John Hawken. And in that situation of sex as spirit, it's possible to create beautiful, holistic ceremonies which incorporate both our sexuality but also our wholeness as people, our wholeness as spiritual beings, and our wholeness with the rest of existence. So a thing that I'll often do with couples is that with the couples, we'll create these beautiful ceremonies, and that is a world away from a sort of perfunctory, performance-based idea of sex that often couples find themselves saddled with. The other points, south, east, in my system is love. In the Quodoushka system, it's what is your habitual way of sexual expression, which is often caricatured as a kind of 50s suburban carry-on kind of thing. But it's an important area, love, because it's coming halfway between these two other points of Tantra, spirit, and innocence. It has the relational component to it, which is particular to you and to the other person. North, east, the one between north and Tantra, in my system, is energetic practices. So that will include things like Taoist erotic massage, that Joseph Kramer invented. It will include the high tantric practice of Yap Yam. It will include practices from Chinese Tantra to do with the circulation of sexual energy, various breathing practices. So that's a very distinct area as well. Going round, northwest, in the Quodoushka system, is usually characterized as S&M or power, and I would put power in that as well. But for me, the Northwest is primarily about play, and so play, you remember Mosher's third mode in one of the earlier talks. So within that, certainly it can be things like BDSM, but which can also be a whole raft of things to do with role play, with enactment of fantasy, certainly playing with power, but not simply playing with power in what can often be quite cliched BDS terms of whips and spanking and things, but psychological power, which I think is much more interesting, to me anyway. And the last one, Southwest, in the Quodoushka system, is about risk. And in my system, that's not about physical risk, so it's not having sex in Clarence Drive over there when the police might come at any moment. What it is a way of engendering radical empathy. So how I use that quadrant is that I would get a couple to work together by explaining a sexual fantasy to the other, not in terms so much of what is being done. It's a risky sexual fantasy, so not so much in terms of what's being done, but in terms of what is being felt, and using my adaptation of David Grove's clean language, I can teach the couple a way of engendering radical empathy. So rather than just think, oh, how on earth could you do that? You can actually get to feel what it's like to want to do that. And that engenders something which creates a bridge. It doesn't mean that the other person's going to want to do that activity, but they understand the activity. So it's not an activity anymore which will disgust them, or which will be like a closed door to them, or which will be a fetish kind of thing, because they understand the feelings underneath it, and they can feel them themselves, and can even be part of that felt world. So that is my system, and so you can see, if you're working with me as a couple, there's a huge amount of variety which can be explored there. And when it's combined with the various maps which I've detailed in these other talks, it creates an almost infinite variety. So I've come to the end of my mini course. I hope that you've found elements of this to be helpful, and that you are able to approach in a way which is kinder and broader the question, what is my sexual nature? Thank you.